ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवतीरुत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्ठिकी। ॐ ज्ञान कृष्ण चैतन्य देवं श्रीराधा कृष्ण पादान् सहगण ललिता श्री विशाखान्वितांश्च नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्ण प्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभो नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा। रीडिंग फ्रॉम श्रीमद् भागवतम by his divine grace AC Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. We are reading from Canto 4, Chapter 25, the characteristics of King Puranjan. So, we are in this final book, Canto 4, Part 4. And the fourth canto, has 31 chapters. This is the third largest in Srimad Bhagavatam. First largest is 10th canto, having 90 chapters. Second largest is third canto, having, I think, 35 chapters that we read. And the third largest is fourth canto. So for a long time we are reading this, and now we are going to conclude this. Okay, in couple of months' time. So we come to text 5 here. So what has happened here is the context is Prachina Barhi is engaged in too much of a creative activity, while Prachetas have gone to perform tapasya. They met Lord Shiva, received Rudra Geetam, and here Narad Muni comes to the kingdom to meet King Prachina Barhi. And he is going to have a discussion with Prachina Barhi. Rajovacha न जानामि महाभाग परम कर्मापविद् परम कर्मापविद्धि ब्रूहि मे विमलं ज्ञानं येन मुच्येय कर्मभिः. Translation.
The king replied, O great soul Narada, my intelligence is entangled in fruitive activities. Therefore, I do not know the ultimate goal of life. Kindly instruct me in pure knowledge so that I can get out of the entanglement of fruitive activities. Purport. Shri Narottama Das Thakur had sung, Satsanga chadi kainu asate vilasa, te karane lagile ye karma bandha phasa. As long as a person is entangled in fruitive activities, he is bound to accept one body after another. This is called karma bandha phasa, entanglement in fruitive activities. It does not matter whether one is engaged in pious or impious activities, for both are causes for further entanglement in material bodies. By pious activities, one can take birth in a rich family and get a good education and a beautiful body. But this does not mean that the distresses of life are ultimately eliminated. In the Western countries, it is not unusual for one to take birth in a rich aristocratic family, nor is it unusual for one to have a good education and a very beautiful body. But this does not mean that Westerners are free from the distresses of life. Although at the present moment, the younger generation in Western countries has sufficient education, beauty, and wealth, And although there is enough food, clothing, and facilities for sense gratification, they are in distress. Indeed, they are so distressed that they become hippies, and the laws of nature force them to accept a wretched life. Thus, they go about unclean and without shelter or food, and they are forced to sleep in the street. It can be concluded that one cannot become happy by simply performing pious activities. It is not a fact that those who are born with a silver spoon in their mouth are free from the material miseries of both old age, disease, and death. The conclusion is that one cannot be happy by simply executing pious or impious activities. Such activities simply cause entanglement and transmigration from one body to another. Narottam Das Thakur calls this karma bandha fasa. King Prachinabhari admitted this fact and frankly asked Narada Muni how he could get out of this karma bandha fasa, entanglement in fruitive activities. This is actually the sage This is actually the stage of knowledge indicated in the first verse of Vedanta Sutra, Atato Brahma Jigyasa. When one actually reaches the platform of frustration in an attempt to discharge karma bandha phasa, he inquires about the real value of life, which is called Brahma Jigyasa. In order to inquire about the ultimate goal of life, the Vedas, Mundaka Upanishad 11.2.12 enjoin Tad Vijnanartham Sa Gurum Eva Bhi Adhigachet. Eva Bhi Gachet. In order to understand the transcendental science, one must approach a bona fide spiritual master. King Prachina Barishad found the best spiritual master, Narada Muni, and he therefore asked him about that knowledge by which one can get out of the entanglement of karma bandha phasa, fruitive activities. This is the actual business of human life. Jivasya tattva jigyasa na artho yes cheha karma bhi, as stated in the second chapter of the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam 1.2.10. A human being's only business is inquiring from a bona fide spiritual master about extrication from the entanglement of karma bandha phasa. Hare Krishna.
Yeah. Raja Vacha. So here Raja is Prachina Barhi, and he began to inquire from Narada Muni. O great soul, na janami mahabhaga. O great personality, I do not know. So begins with na janami mahabhaga. Very beautiful. Param karmapa vidyati. That my intelligence is only limited to the activities of fruitive activities. I do not know the ultimate goal of my life and the pure knowledge, Vimalam. Vimalam means spotless, right? The spotless knowledge. Vimala is happy hearing this. Kindly instruct me in pure knowledge so that I can get out of this entanglement of fruitive activities. So, very wonderfully, Prachina Barhi is inquiring from Narada Muni. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada quotes Narottam Das Thakur, Satsanga chadi kainu asati vilas, te karane lagida ye karma bandha fas. That karma bandha fas is very, very strong. Moghasha, moha karmanu, moha jnana vichetasa. Sometimes we think that karma bandha fas is only towards the downside. That means, the papa is bad and, the sin, the reactions of papa is very bad. And they are, of course, they are bad. But similarly, from the ultimate perspective, reactions of punya are also equally binding, right? It's just like somebody has punya and excessive punya, and then what will lead to excessive punya? Janma Ishwarya Shruta Shribihi, Edamana Madapuman, that is will lead to Janma Ishwarya Shruta, right? But ultimately, even Janma Ishwarya Shruta is also going to bind us to the material world, right? It is either the iron chain of Papa is binding or the golden chain of Punya is binding. And therefore, both Papa and Punya are equally binding. So, first thing is we have to give up the Papa, and progressively we have to give up the attitude of Punya also. So, if we don't have to do Papa also and Punya also, what to do? We have to do Bhakti. Right. That is very important thing. Srila Prabhupada says, simply having good education, simply having good bodily features, and a rich family does not guarantee material satisfaction. Right. And Srila Prabhupada gives a classic example, contemporary, when Prabhupada was there. So many Westerners, they coming from the very rich families and having very good bodily features, but they rejected their families' purposes. The laws of nature will force them to accept a degraded life, a wretched life, and became like a hippie lying in the gutters like a pig. Right. This is how the laws of nature force a person. So Prabhupada says it is not a fact that simply one is born with a silver spoon, they are free from the material distress, and especially the distress of Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadhi. See, many times we think money can solve our problems because currently we are facing the problems which is because of the lack of money. But those who have money, their problems are far different and far unsolvable by money, and that's why they have problem in spite of having money, right? So having simply a silver spoon doesn't mean one will have life free from the material miseries, and therefore conclusion is that one cannot be happy simply executing pious or impious activities, right? So if one performs impious activities, he will be tortured by the laws of material nature. And if one simply performs pious activities, the torture by the material nature will not be there. It will be replaced by the facility by the material nature, but still it is insufficient from the ultimate perspective. And therefore, Narottam Das Thakur calls this as karma bandha fasa. Prachina Barhi was very frank personality and he accepted this fact and he said that, my dear spiritual master Narada Muni, please save me from this karma bandha fast. And Prabhupada says, this is where the beginning of the knowledge is athato brahma jigyasa. When somebody reaches this platform of a frustration, that dharma, artha, kama, and satisfying the desires so many times, upari adaha, going up and down, and finally one is just disgusted with material enjoyment and inquires about the higher truth, then one comes to the point of athato brahma jigyasa, right? And further, Srila Prabhupada says that when one reaches to this point, spiritual one has to take shelter of the spiritual master. Tad vijnanartham sagurum eva abhigachet. We cannot ask Google or chat gpt, I'm feeling frustrated, what should I do? Right. One has to ask spiritual master. And Prachina Barhi was fortunate enough to find the best spiritual master, Prabhupada writes, and that is Narada Muni. He asked him for the knowledge, how to get out this karmabandha fast, and and what is the goal of the human form of life? Jivasya tattva jitnyasa nartho yascheha karmavi. Srila Prabhupada writes here, the human being's only business is to inquire about the bona fide, inquired from the bona fide spiritual master about how to execute, how to come out of this karma bandha fast. Okay, so look at the point, how many times Srila Prabhupada writes the word karma bandha fast. Okay. The one here, and then later Srila Prabhupada describes almost like 5 times Prabhupada uses this word karma bandha fast. Correct. Text 6. Now here, Maharaj Prachina Barhi is expressing his entangled position. Very beautiful verse. We'll recite this. Gruheshu kuta dharmeshu
गृहेषु कूटधर्मेषु
putradaradhanarthadihi
पुत्रादारधनार्थी
न param pindate मूढो
मन्दते मूढो
भ्राम्यं संसारवर्त्मसु. Translation.
Translation: those who are interested only in a so-called dutiful life, namely remaining as a householder, entangled by sons and a wife and searching after wealth, think that such things are life's ultimate goal. Such people simply wander in different types of bodies throughout this material existence without finding out the ultimate goal of life. Purport: those who are too much attached to family life, which consists of entanglement with wife, children, wealth, and home, are engaged in Kuta Dharma, pseudo duties. Prahlad Maharaj has likened these pseudo occupational duties to a dark well, Andha Kupam. Prahlada has purposefully spoken of this dark well because if one falls into this well, he will die. He may cry for help, but no one will hear him or come to rescue him. The words Brahmayana Samsara Vartamasu are significant. In Chaitanya Charitamrit Madhya 19.151, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu very clearly explains Brahmananda Brahmite Kona Bhagyavan Jiva. All living entities are wandering in different types of bodies throughout different planets, and if in the course of their wanderings they come in contact with the devotee by the direction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, their lives become successful. Even though King Prachinabarishth was engaged in fruitive activity, the great sage Narada appeared before him. The king was very fortunate to be able to associate with Narada, who enlightened him in spiritual knowledge. It is a duty of all saintly persons to follow in the footsteps of Narada Muni and travel all over the world to every country and village just to instruct illusion persons about the goal of life and to save them from the entanglement of karma bandha, fruitive activity. Hare Krishna.
Yeah. So now Prachina Barhi Maharaj is explaining Gruheshu Kuta Dharmeshu. I am engaged in so many false occupational duties. Again, okay, so we have to realize this. Prachina Barhi is living for a very long time, and after prolonged period, at the fag end of his life, this conversation is taking place. Okay. So if you are newly married or just having a kid and planning for a second or something like that, don't take a wrong inspiration from Srimad Bhagavatam. We should know when to apply Bhagavad Gita and when to apply Srimad Bhagavatam. So he's saying, Gruheshu Kuta Dharmeshu, Putra Dara Dhanarthadhi. My intelligence is always absorbed in Putra Dara. Dara means husband or wife. Dhana, Artha. And this is all my goal of my life. Na param vindate mudho. I have not inquired about the absolute truth. Na param vindate. Brahmyan samsara vartmasu. And this is how I am brahmayati samsara vartmasu, the repetition of birth and death. This is the path I have taken. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains those who are too attached to family life, the attachment naturally goes to wife, husband, children, wealth, home, and this is how Putra Dara Dhanarthadi will come in Bhagavatam time and again. Okay, this phrase. And thus they will be engaged in Kuta Dharma or the pseudo duties. Many times Kuta Dharma also means, trying to earn money by some crooked means. And Kali Yuga has spread through so badly. Recently, I was speaking with one very wonderful doctor, and he said that actually it is very difficult to practice very honestly. The some of the hospitals, I'm just using some because just don't want to get caught in the words, but it is most of the hospitals. Most of the hospitals, but we'll say some of the hospitals, will literally give target to the doctors that how long the patient should be admitted, because they have to make sure that entire economy of the this thing works out. So this is about, and why about doctors? Same thing is with engineers. The same thing is with the teachers, at least to the grade of the classes that which are going on, RCC and all those fraud in Latur. So Kuta Dharmeshu. Kuta Dharmeshu means the material life often becomes very, very Kuta. Right. Kuta Dharmeshu. And thus one is engaged in the pseudo activities, and thus the pseudo activities will ensure one Brahmayan samsara vartmashu. And therefore one should be very, Bhagavatam, somewhere it is written that it is written in Ishopanishad actually. The ways of the devotees, they are as bright as the light of the sun. Like the sunlight, the ways of the devotees are very bright. So we are okay earning little less. We are okay earning, much lesser and having lesser influence, but we are absolutely not okay with samsara vartmashu. So one has to be very careful in one's earning the way one is earning, right? So there are some kuta dharma in one's earning. One should one should keep a arm's length distance and stay away. I remember one devotee, very amazing devotee. He's in Kolkata now. We studied together, Sankirtan Anand Prabhu. And he got his job. The first job he got in a very good company. But the job he was working on, automation of a butcher house, slaughterhouse. And of course, he was writing a code, but that code he was writing for the slaughterhouse. And the project had come to one very respected company, and he was working in a very good company. He's COEP pass out, and finally he just when he realized what code he's writing for, he was asking the technical knowledge, and then he gave up that job. We have another devotee. He is attending the morning reading also here. He was getting a big fat salary in one pesticide company. But then the ways and means of that. So, the Kuta Dharmeshu, it is very important. The way we earn money is very, very important. That money can remain Chanchala or Lakshmi based on whether it is Kuta Dharmeshu or not. So one has to be very careful in earning one's money by very proper means. Then when one is samsara vartmashu, one is going up and down like this, upari adha, very fortunately one may come across a spiritual master. Brahmand Brahmite Kon Bhagyavan Jeev. And this association of the spiritual master has to be taken very seriously. Spiritual master comes and we can associate with him only in the human form of life, and it is very, very rare. And therefore, the king was very fortunate to come across one of the greatest of the personality, that is Narada Muni. And Prabhupada says, and therefore, the duty of the saintly person is also make people fortunate by moving around, moving around all over the world, coming across their life and helping people coming out of karma bandha pass. Text 7. Narada uvacha भो भो प्रजापते राजन् पशुन् पश्चात् त्वयाध्वरे संज्ञापतेर्जीवसङ्घान् निगृणेन सहस्त्रशः. Now Narad Muni uvacha. Yeah, translation.
The great Saint Narada said, O ruler of the citizens, my dear king, please see in the sky those animals which you have sacrificed without compassion and without mercy in the sacrificial arena. Purport. Because animal sacrifice is recommended in the Vedas, there are animal sacrifices in almost all religious rituals. However, one should not be satisfied simply by killing animals according to the directions of the scriptures. One should transcend the ritualistic ceremonies and try to understand the actual truth, the purpose of life. Narada Muni wanted to instruct the king about the real purpose of life and invoke a spirit of renunciation in his heart. Knowledge and the spirit of renunciation, Jnana Vairagya, are the ultimate goal of life. Without knowledge, one cannot become detached from material enjoyment, and without being detached from material enjoyment, one cannot make spiritual advancement. Karmis are generally engaged in sense gratification, and for this end, they are prepared to commit so many sinful activities. Animal sacrifice is but one such sinful activity. Consequently, by his mystic power, Narada Muni showed King Prachina Bharishad the dead animals which he had sacrificed.
Yeah. Bho Bho Prajapate Rajan. Narad Muni says, Oh Prajapati Rajan, Pashun Pashya Tvayadvari. Narad Muni created by his extreme power. Narad Muni just called all the animals that Prachinabari had sacrificed, and these animals, the Prachinabari could see in the sky how many animals he had sacrificed. This is amazing way of Narad Muni. He can directly show all the animals. And he said that all these animals we have butchered mercilessly in the sacrificial arena. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains that animal sacrifice is recommended in the Vedas, but there is a limit to this sacrifice. And when this limit is crossed, even the Lord himself appears as a Buddha avatar and rejects sacrifice. And because people say, oh, how can we give up sacrifice? Then he rejects Vedas. Okay. And therefore, Lord Buddha's incarnation is considered to be Apatkala incarnation, Anibani. It's an emergency incarnation because people lost the purpose of life. People simply thought that killing the animals is and eating them later became the goal of life. They lost the real purpose of knowledge and spirit of renunciation, jnana vairagya, and therefore Prabhupada says one has to be very careful. Without knowledge, one cannot become detached from material entanglement. And without becoming detached from material entanglement, one cannot make spiritual advancement. And therefore, knowledge is very, very important. So, the animal sacrifice is absolutely, no doubt, a sinful activities. Right. There are many sinful activities, and animal sacrifice is one of them. And now let us not get into the particular religion sacrificing crores of animals and all that, because Prabhupada writes even this is there in the Vedas as well. Right. So, but the greatness of Narada Muni that he showed all the previous animals. And now just imagine that when Prachina Barihi is going to select animals, it was a personal choice, right? Personal choice. Doing Ashwamedha Yagya, he chose a Ghoda, that was with a personal choice. To do another Yagya, he must have chosen some another Bakri or whatever that goat or the and all the specifications and everything. And Narada Muni made them appear in the sky, and he could realize each one sacrifice which animal he sacrificed when, and all these animals were looking at Prachina Barihi by the mercy of Narada Muni. So the great fortune of Prachina Barihi was to come across as the spiritual master as Narada Muni. Text 8. एते त्वां सम्प्रतिक्षन्ते स्मरन्तो वैशसं तव सम्परेतम् अयः कूटौ छिन्दन्त्युत्थितमन्यवः. Translation.
All these animals are awaiting your death so that they can avenge the injuries you have inflicted upon them. After you die, they will angrily pierce your body with iron horns. Purport: Narada Muni wanted to draw King Prachinadarhit's attention to the axis of killing animals in sacrifices. It is said in the Shastras that by killing animals in a sacrifice, one immediately promotes them to human birth. Similarly, by killing their enemy on a battlefield, the Kshatriya who fight for the right cause are elevated to the heavenly planets after death. In Manu Samhita, it is stated that it is necessary for a king to execute a murderer so that the murderer will not suffer for his criminal action in his next life. On the basis of such understanding, Narada Muni warns king that the animals killed in the sacrifices by the king await him at his death in order to avenge themselves. Narada Muni is not contradicting himself here. Narada Muni wanted to convince the king that overindulgence in animal sacrifice is risky because as soon as there is a small discrepancy in the execution of such a sacrifice, the slaughtered animal may not be promoted to a human form of life. Consequently, the person performing sacrifice will be responsible for the death of the animal, just as much as a murderer is responsible for killing another man. When animals are killed in a slaughterhouse, 6 people connected with him, the killing are responsible. 6 people connected with the killing are responsible for the murder. The person who gives permission for the killing, the person who kills, the person who helps, the person who purchases the meat, the person who cooks the flesh, and the person who eats it all become entangled in the killing. Narada Muni wanted to draw the king's attention to this fact. Thus, animal killing is not encouraged even in a sacrifice. Hare Krishna.
All these animals, they are awaiting your death so that they can avenge the injuries you have inflicted upon them. And when you die, O Prachina Barihi, they will angrily pierce your body with their iron horns. Okay. Now, how this piercing and everything happens, it will be described in the 5th canto that the punishments in the hellish planet. Right. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains that Narada Muni wanted to draw King Prachina Bari's attention that excessive killing of the animals in the sacrifice is dangerous. Why? Because whenever there is excess, there is always a chance of not performing the sacrifice very well, and instead of the sacrificed animal attaining the human form of life, if the sacrifice fails because of being excess, doing too many times, what happens is it simply becomes murder of the animals. And just like the murderer is executed by the king, similarly, the animal who is sacrificed, which does not attain the human form of life, thus the failed sacrifice, the king will be responsible for murder of that animal, and animal in the next life will kill the king in the similar way. We have a book, Srila Prabhupada's book, second Laws of Nature. And the Laws of Nature book has a very beautiful cover page. Somebody has raised the axe and about to kill a goat, and only the face is changed. The man has the goat's face, and the goat has the man's face. And when we go for book distribution, many people say, "अरे आपके picture में mistake है करके." There is a big mistake on your picture. But this is not the mistake. This is what the laws of karma are. And therefore, Prabhupada says, even for the sacrifice, one should not kill animals. And in Kali Yuga, though, it is banned. Correct. Ashwamedam gavalambam sannyasam palapaitrukam devarena satopattim kalau pancha vivarjaya. These animal killing is banned in Kali Yuga for sacrifice. Even when it was allowed, it should not be done excessively. And what to speak of killing the animal in the slaughterhouse, that is the abject sinful activity. And 6 people are involved. Sometimes people say, like, it was a very tricky trap for Dalai Lama. Of course, not to minimize his position, but what happened is somebody asked him that if somebody serves you meat on the plate, will you eat it? And he is the Buddhist monk, the top monk of the Buddhist religion. And he was in a fix. And he said that yes, he will eat because he has not killed the animal. And Prabhupada says, no, that is the trap. There are 6 people who are involved, who are responsible for the murder of the animal. One who gives permission for killing, one who kills, one who helps in killing, one who purchases the meat, one who cooks the meat, and one who eats the meat. All 6 people are responsible for killing the animal. And therefore, Narada Muni wanted to draw the king's attention to this fact that animal killing is not recommended even for a sacrifice. So we will conclude here and continue tomorrow. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Thank you, Prabhupada. Thank you, everyone. Hare Krishna.
Thank you,
Hare
Prabhupada.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
Thank you,
Prabhuji.
Prabhupada.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Prabhuji. Hare
Prabhuji.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Bol.
Yes, Mataji.
Prabhuji, if someone working in stock market, so this is also gambling?
बहुत loaded question है Mataji.
I have
It's
one
a
question.
big question.
Is
Okay.
okay. Yeah.
Okay, I can answer this in one line. Is that if you are participating in the wealth creation through stock market, it doesn't become gambling. So long term is not a gambling. But if it is trading, if it is intraday, if it is options buying, option sellings, and those kind of things, then it comes very much in the gambling. But again, the answer is not so simple because I have studied this for a very long time. And after a lot of studies, actually, I mean, it's a big answer. In life, in a way, a lot of things are gambling, but this gambling is addictive and uncontrollable, and therefore the results are extremely bad. There is a rule in stock market which is called as 90-90-90. 90-90-90 means 90% of the people will lose 90% of their money in first 90 days. Right. So it is dangerously addictive. It is, so I mean, and those who are doing it successfully, they are supported by humongous research. They are supported by, the kind of facilities that they have is phenomenal. They will have collocated servers right in the buildings of NSE, the stacked with NSE servers. The rates that we see on the tick, they are all raddi because they will trade. High frequency traders, they will do it in microseconds and nanoseconds. So safely one should stay away from all this. And after crunching through almost like 100+ books on stock market, on finance. After doing my chartered wealth management, CISP, and everything else, finally I have concluded is mutual fund sahi hai. Okay. So you can still participate in the India growth story by through the medium of mutual fund, which is far better, far safer than direct involvement with stocks, or worst is with futures and options and everything else. Right?
Yeah, okay, Prabhu. Thank you very much, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. But I can speak 3 hours on this topic. Okay. Hare
Okay,
Krishna. Thank you. Thank you, Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhupada.
Hare
Thank you
Krishna.
very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you, Prabhupada. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.